health, her heart is fragile.
And every hour and minute and second and every long night has been agony since then.
She is without any medicine. She needs it to survive.
We need your help.
A difference a DoorDash, an Uber, a delivery, a Lyft can make. Do you remember in Brian Kohberger's prosecution after the murders of 4 beautiful University of Idaho students?
And now I have to testify in murder case too, so yeah, because I'm a DoorDash driver, so yeah.
You have to testify in which murder case?
Murder case for the college girls.
Oh.
I'm a DoorDash driver, I self-ran that.
Take that, Kohberger, busted by the DoorDash delivery woman. To Joseph Scott Morgan joining us, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, the author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon, star of a hit podcast, Body Bags with Joe Scott Morgan. But for our purposes, he is a death investigator with over 10,000 investigations under his belt. Joe Scott Morgan, do you remember in Kohberger, eyewitness DoorDash delivery person identifies Kohberger as being outside the murder scene, 1122 King Road, at the time of the murders, 4 o'clock in the morning. Really? Yeah. Busted.
And
now, in this
you know
case,
what? I don't,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm reflecting back right now. You could have knocked me over with a feather when we got that footage. Do you remember that? Because we didn't know that existed. And all of a sudden, all it takes, Nancy, is just one little turn of the screw, right? Something that we're not completely aware of. And then all of a sudden, boom, the narrative completely changes, or at least the narrative is more clear. And I think we might be headed down this road with Mrs. Guthrie.
Just learned that in the Celeste Rivas case, where D4VD, a.k.a. David Anthony Burke, is now charged in her murder and her dismemberment of this then 13-year-old little girl. Don't show me him. I've seen him enough. I don't care if I ever see him again. The Tesla. Every Tesla has 360-degree visual, unless it's been destroyed. In this case, see how valuable that is in the Celeste Rivas case? In this case, no one, until a few days ago, has been looking at around that Uber delivery, that Uber drive. So what, if anything, can we learn, Joe Scott Morgan?
Well, certainly directionality. What route was taken? And also, look, as an old investigator, I want to know as much as I possibly can about the driver. That they have an awareness of her, maybe who she is, this sort of thing. Were they followed in any way, I think? And so any kind of players that might be involved in this peripheral, look, we'll take anything, right? We'll take absolutely anything relative to the data that can be sourced. Where did this individual go before? Okay, he picked up Mrs. Guthrie. Where did he go after he picked up Mrs. Guthrie? I want to know everything about it in granular detail, Nancy.
From what we of the kidnap of Mrs. Guthrie. So what we're getting at is when he picked up Mrs. Guthrie to take her to Annie's, we have reason to believe the perp was already in the neighborhood, positioned, waiting. Straight out to Cheryl McCollum joining us, Cold Case Investigative Research Institute founder. She is also a crime scene investigator, and she is the star of a hit podcast, Zone 7. She's the author of Reason to Believe that if when you don't know a horse, Cheryl McCollum, you look at his track record. We already know that Miss Guthrie's kidnapper was there on January 11. He's caught on video and very likely there on previous occasions. He was in that neighborhood and poised with his accomplice when Mrs. Guthrie was first picked up and taken to Annie Guthrie's. Many people believe he may have already gotten into her place before Mrs. Guthrie returned home that night.
You know, Nancy, I want to go back to the car first. When I first get to a scene and I get out of my car, I take photographs up and down the street. The reason is I don't know what cars belong there and what don't. I don't know who parks on the street normally, who's in a driveway, etc. They can go back with that Tesla video and see if there's somebody parked on the side of the road, if there's somebody parked in a driveway that doesn't belong. This person we know cased out her home before. You already mentioned the 11th. We think, you know, again on the 20-something and then on the 30th. This person cased it. They knew her, you know, comings and goings. They knew what she looked like. On this night, they, I believe, were laying in wait. I think they know exactly when she got home. And that's why you see him going back to the front door after all the lights are out and he thinks she's sound asleep.
Cheryl. Guys, joining me in addition to Joe Scott Morgan, Cheryl McCollum is with us, the star of Zone 7 podcast. Cheryl, how many cases did you and I work together in inner city Atlanta and Fulton County? I mean, can we even count them? I can't.
Thousands.
Yeah, you know, it's hard when I look back to count the numbers. 100, 150 brand new felonies a week times 4, that's a month, times 12, times 10 years plus. That's a lot of cases. So, Cheryl, is there anything new under the sun? Defendants do the same thing over and over and over. They can't help themselves. Like, think about it. Everybody listening right now, do you brush your teeth the same way, at the same time, every morning, in the same order? Do you wash your clothes a certain way? Do you get somewhere in your car and go, oh my goodness, I don't even remember getting here. I must have zoned out. People do the same things over and over and over. It's like it's muscle memory. So what I'm saying, Cheryl, we know this guy, the perp, one of them anyway, because I believe there had to be at least two involved. We know this guy lay in wait before. We know he cased the scene more than once. So he was very high on preparation, getting there ahead of time. What would be any different this time? It's like every time a dog sits down, it circles 3 times. You know he was in that neighborhood, which makes it very important to review the video from the Uber driver that picked up Mrs. Guthrie that night. And also, Cheryl McCollum, a lot has been made about the daughter, Annie Guthrie, and brother-in-law.
She is 84 years old. Her heart is fragile. She depends on medication to survive, and somewhere out there tonight she is without it. That is the reality that has haunted every single person connected to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, mother of NBC Today show anchor Savannah Guthrie, who vanished from her Tucson, Arizona home in the early hours of January 30th. But tonight something has shifted. Investigators are now taking a hard second look at footage that was hiding in plain sight, the Uber ride that brought Nancy home that evening, the driver, the route, the timestamp, and more importantly, what may have been captured in the background of that footage without anyone realizing it. Because here is what we know. The person who took Nancy Guthrie was not a stranger passing through. He was not opportunistic. He was not improvising. He had been there before, caught on camera as far back as January 11th standing at her front door, not breaking in, just watching, learning her schedule, memorizing when the lights went out. Investigators believe he returned on multiple occasions after that, each visit a rehearsal, each drive through that quiet neighborhood another data point collected. And then on the night of January 30th, he came back one final time, dressed the same as always, but this time carrying a backpack and a weapon. He came mission ready. Which brings us back to that Uber. When Annie Guthrie dropped her mother off that evening, the working theory is that the perpetrator was already in the neighborhood, already positioned, already waiting. The Uber driver who transported Nancy earlier that night didn't just carry a passenger. his vehicle may have driven directly past the suspect, or past the vehicle used to transport Nancy away from the scene. And that is why investigators are now asking a question that should have been asked weeks ago. What does that Uber's footage actually show? Not just Nancy's condition inside the car, was she coherent, was she distressed, but what was happening outside that vehicle, on the street, in the driveways, parked along the curb in the dark. Because just like the DoorDash driver who placed Brian Koberger outside the King Road house at 4 in the morning, the night 4 University of Idaho students were murdered, sometimes the most important witness isn't looking for anything. They're just doing their job, and the evidence is right there in the background. Every modern rideshare vehicle is a data machine. The GPS tracks every turn, every stop, every moment the car slowed down or accelerated. If the driver's phone went to airplane mode, it doesn't matter. The vehicle's own black box is still running, still recording, still telling investigators whether a door opened, whether the trunk moved, whether the car paused somewhere it shouldn't have. And then there is the Tesla comparison. In the Celeste Rivas case, where a then 13-year-old girl was murdered and dismembered, it was Tesla footage that cracked the case wide open. 360 degrees of visual documentation, capturing everything around the vehicle at all times. In this case, Annie Guthrie's husband drove Nancy home that night in a blue Honda CR-V. Honda CR-Vs, depending on trim level, carry navigation systems with their own data logs. That vehicle was impounded. Did that car move again after 9 p.m.? The black box would know. It doesn't lie, it doesn't forget, and it cannot be manipulated. This is what modern investigation looks like. Not just knocking on doors and pulling fingerprints, but reconstructing every digital footprint left behind by every device, every vehicle, every app connected to that night. And tonight, there is one more piece of the puzzle on the table. Annie Guthrie, in the earliest days of the investigation, while her mother was still missing and investigators were still treating this like a wandering elderly woman, went into a neighborhood group chat and posted a map, a specific route, the path she believed the kidnapper used to get away. Along that route, cameras everywhere. An elementary school with overlapping fields of view covering every angle of the intersection. A nail salon with a surveillance camera aimed directly at the roadway. Gas stations, pharmacies, businesses open through the night. And if that route is real, if that is the road the killer took with Nancy Guthrie in his vehicle, then somewhere along those miles a camera caught something. A make, a model, a partial plate. The question nobody has been able to answer yet is this: why, after nearly 90 days, has nothing surfaced? The answer may be simpler than it sounds. Tucson's geography is vast and open. At almost any point along that route, a driver who knows the area can veer off hard right or hard left straight into desert. No intersection, no stoplight, no camera. A man who spent weeks studying that neighborhood almost certainly studied the roads out of it too. But there is one thing he could not fully avoid. Every time that vehicle crossed a major thoroughfare to turn, to merge, to navigate out of that neighborhood, it had to slow down, even a rolling stop, even 5 miles per hour through an intersection at 2 a.m. That is enough. That is a frame. That is a capture. And investigators are now going through thousands of hours of footage looking for exactly that moment. A vehicle in the right place at the right time, moving just slowly enough to be seen. Fresh eyes are on this case tonight. Federal eyes. And the clock, for once, is not running against justice. It is running against whoever thought they could disappear into the Tucson desert and never be found. They were wrong. And when this case breaks, and it will break, you are going to want to be here for it. So if you are not subscribed to The Hidden Verdict yet, hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a comment below telling us what you think investigators are missing. And if this story moved you, share it, because sometimes the person who needed to see it just hasn't found us yet. Like, comment, subscribe. We will see you in the next one.
Of Savannah Guthrie, their car being impounded, and why it took so long. How do I know it didn't have 360 nav, just like a Tesla? Remember what we learned in the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial and the murders of his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul? His SUV, it was a big honking like a Wagoneer or something, revealed so much data. When he took off from the crime scene that night, scratching off, when he slowed down his vehicle, let the passenger window down electronically, yes, the black box of his car showed that, threw out Maggie's cell phone and then scratched off to hide out at his mother's house. Remember all that? So much we can learn. So Cheryl, so while their vehicle was in impound, how do I know they weren't looking at that?
They should have been. They not only should be looking at any type of data that could come from the car, whether it's video or from the black box. Did that car move after 9 o'clock? They would know that. And that's why it's critical when you're ruling people in and ruling them out. Go through all of it in order to truly rule somebody out. The data from that phone, the data from the car, it's going to tell the story. That's not something they can manipulate. The Uber driver the same way. If he were to put his phone on airplane mode, that black box in that car is still operational and still telling us whether it's rolling forward, in park, the trunk opens, the passenger door opens. We will know all of it.
Back to you, Joe Scott and I believe Cheryl and Fitz were talking at the very, very beginning when Miss Guthrie went missing about the importance, the critical nature of vehicles in this case. And now it's coming true.
We absolutely were, because she's dependent, I think, to a great degree upon people moving her about. And so our vehicles are so tied to what our identity is and how we move about, and also where we are at any given time. So I think that this could be one of the keys that's going to unlock this. We can talk about physical evidence all you want to, but the big piece to this is her movement, because that's essential, Nancy. And one of the big questions we've always had, how did she get into the house, out of the house? Was she conveyed in any way? What's being implied here? So all of the actors that at least the police have revealed to this point are going to play a role in this, trying to create this timeline. And hopefully, Nancy, and it's rather grim, but where is she? I think is a big part to this as well. And that's a question that we all want to know, right? We want to know who the perp is, but we want to know where she is in her current status, Nancy.
Well, again, a track record. How many cases have been busted by vehicles? And all we need is one clue about the vehicle. I mean, think it through. Let's take a look, just for the fun of it, at Brian Kohberger's white Elantra zipping around, caught on one cam after the next, Yep. And it wasn't just Brian Kohberger. Do I have to say Molly Tibbetts? As you will recall, Cheryl McCollum, star of Zone 7, Cheryl McCollum, in the Molly Tibbetts case, the perp was unknown to her. There was no connection, which made the case even more difficult to crack. It was like a needle in a haystack until video emerged of the killer's car going back and forth and back and forth. And then you see Molly Tibbetts come into the frame. And the perp, is talking to her, trying to get her in the car. She threatens to call 911. What was interesting about that vehicle, it had distinct markings along the side of it, and that is how the killer was caught. And we've seen it play out over and over again. In the case of the glam yoga teacher, Caitlin Armstrong, her SUV, let's take a look at that, was spotted going round and around and around the murder scene just before a world-class female dirt bike racer was murdered. Over what? A man. Because her boyfriend, Caitlin Armstrong's boyfriend, had a hamburger with the victim. So what's her logical action? Kill her. That video cracked the case. So in this case, straight out to Brian Fitzgibbons joining us, Director of Operations, USPA Nationwide Security, leading a team of investigators around the world, finding and extracting missing people. He's also a former Marine and Iraqi war vet. Brian, this vehicle, I understand that new eyes are now looking at video for parked cars, for people walking, not just on the night of the abduction, but before the kidnapper was there ahead of time. That is his MO, modus operandi, method of operation. So what could the Uber driver's car reveal, depending on what kind of car it is?
I think you and Joe Scott Morgan hit the nail on the head just earlier there, that what's in the background and the periphery of that video. So on top of establishing that Mrs. Guthrie was coherent, in a good state while she was in that ride, there might be other things that we can see. Was there a vehicle spotted on a front-facing camera? Some of these Ubers have not only rear-facing passenger cameras, but they could have front-facing cameras as well, operating at the same time. And I'll add one piece here. There are still thousands of hours of video collected from both public and private sources that review is ongoing and a very tedious effort. But what they're focusing on is trying to find a vehicle in the right space and right time that can lead to be further investigated.
Now, we know, moving beyond the Uber driver that picked up Nancy Guthrie that night, a lot has been made to you, Joe Scott Morgan, about Annie Guthrie and her husband's vehicle. We know that it was a blue Honda CRV, and Hondas, CRV specifically, do have nav system depending on the trim level you get on the car. Now, what does that mean? And what, if anything, can we learn from that? Because he, the son-in-law, brings Nancy home, and you know the killer was somewhere in the area when she was brought home.
When we're thinking about her delivery back home, who exactly is out there watching? Because Nancy, as I've held all along, and I think this is kind of obvious, but this is a targeted attack. They knew her. They knew who she was. They knew her comings and goings. And here's the thing. They knew that she's vulnerable. And so they're going to spring whenever they see that her guard is down. We're talking about kind of late at night. She's barely ambulatory. She's worn out. She's been with her family at this point in time. They know she's going to turn in for bed, Nancy. It's been a long day, right? And so they're observing, they're waiting, they're watching. Now, what are they waiting for exactly? Because, that's a bigger question, thinking about, why out of all the people in the world would they want to go after this poor woman? Well, I mean, I have my own thoughts about that relative to they know who her daughter is. I think everybody's going to know that's involved in this. And so they've targeted her, right? And so they're going to wait until they can spring their trap. And the question is, where did they put their vehicle to transport her off? And back to what Brian had said, this idea of going through all of this videography is going to be key to try to determine where another vehicle may have come and introduced themselves or itself into this equation, this visual equation that we're trying to figure out at this point in time. That's going to be critical. And look, I don't know who's looking at the video. I'm assuming it's probably the feds. I hope it's the feds, and that they're going to try to break this down as into the base elements, because nothing, and I mean nothing, Nancy, at this point in time is off the table. Everybody has to be considered. And, as my grandpa used to say, let the hide come with the hair. I don't care who it impacts relative to the evidence, relative to a vehicle. Check it out. Go out there, look for these individuals, put them up against the wall, talk to them about it. Let's find out, why were you there during that night? I'm hoping that they've done it to this point. I'm hoping that they're continuing to do it because you have to press in any investigation. As we well know, time is a precious commodity in this case.
So tonight, in addition to a review of video footage from not only that Uber driver, but from Annie Guthrie's vehicle, to determine not just what was Mrs. Guthrie wearing, what was her demeanor, did she look ill, was she concerned? Not just that, looking for the vehicle, and that is going to require a lot of enhancement of the video. God willing, the video is still there. We also learned that fresh eyes are reviewing the evidence from the feds. Not only is that video being reviewed as we go to air, we learn that Annie Guthrie herself provided the route she believes the killer used that night. Let's take a look at it. Straight out to Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter. What is this? Where did it come from?
This actually, Annie Guthrie was in a group chat online with neighbors and sent this map to them at the beginning of the investigation, Nancy. This was put out there early, hoping that somebody might have seen something or had video along, you see the blue map line there, that somebody along that way could look through their video. I mean, this is really an incredible source of information from Annie Guthrie coming up with what she thought was the plan, or the route rather, taken by on the way home. So they're looking for anyone along this pathway, you know, that might have seen something. It's curious when you really get into this that she's marked different addresses along the way. It's just an incredible piece of information that Annie Guthrie offered to this group with neighbors talking about the area.
You know, if this route is real, if this is the route the killer took, straight out to you, Cheryl McCollum, joining us, crime scene investigator of many years, author of a brand new book, and star of Zone 7. Okay, what do we do with it? This is the route that Annie Guthrie is allegedly convinced the killer used. It's full of evidence.
Nancy, when you're looking at this map and you see all the places, the nail salon, I mean, you've got tons of businesses, you've got residential areas. I would not, number one, I would not limit my investigation to this map, but I would certainly go through it based on what her daughter believes could be a route. We are over 80 days into this thing, and we don't have a legitimate video of a vehicle. You've got to ask yourself why. How is that possible with all of these intersections that we know have cameras, the gas stations, the churches, the businesses? How do we not have a vehicle? Well, Nancy, as you know, I was out there, and here's what I can tell you. At any given point almost, you could take a hard right or a hard left and cut through little parts of the desert. It's vast. It's open. You don't have to go through that intersection if you don't want to. You can go right through parts of the land and avoid some of these places. So again, we know at 127, he's at the front door. We know by 229, the app has disconnected to her watch. We have a timetable. There's no way at this point, after 80 days, they can't pinpoint 1 mile away in that circumference and not catch him somehow. And I think with all the planning, he avoided those cameras.
You know, he avoided those cameras, Cheryl. I hear what you're saying, but it's also a non sequitur. It doesn't make sense. If he did all that camera avoidance, then how come he didn't know the camera on her front porch worked?